Today's recipe calls for cheddar cheese. We're going to make cheese crackers. This is basically a knockoff of some Cheez-Its. So with that said, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is combine all of our dry ingredients together. In a bowl you're going to add half a cup of all-purpose flour, a quarter teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and to finish it off, 1 teaspoon of paprika. Then you're going to lightly whisk your face off to combine all of the dry ingredients together. You can play around and use whatever spices you would like. This is a good base, so it's up to you. Play around with spices to see what you like best. Next, in a large bowl, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter. Then we'll shred in 4 ounces of sharp cheddar cheese. It's best to shred your own cheese because pre-shredded cheese has a coating on it to prevent it from sticking, and we don't want that in our crackers because we want this to come together. You can play around with the cheeses and use a Swiss cheese, a white cheddar, add some Parmesan, or do some Parmesan and some sharp cheddar. It's really up to you. I stuck with the sharp orange cheddar just to keep it the same as a Cheez-It. Now that you have all of your cheese shredded, you're going to smush and smash your butter and cheese together. This takes some effort, so apply good pressure to squish it all together. We're going to smash it until it all combines into a nice buttery, cheesy mixture. This doesn't look like it's going to make crackers, but trust me, it eventually comes together and makes a delicious cracker. So keep smushing away until it all comes together. Now that you've smashed it and smushed it for what feels like an entire year, this is what you should end up with. A nice, smooth cheese butter. That sounds really healthy. Now that you have a cheesy butter mixture, we're going to add all of our dry ingredients to our bowl. Then we're going to use a fork to cut everything together. This is the same method you would use if you were making a pie crust. So fork your face off until everything comes together into a nice crumbled mixture of flour, butter, and cheese. This is quite the workout. I'm so glad we're going to have something to eat after this. I'm really going to need it. Use the tip of your knife, using the tines to cut through the butter cheese mixture to cut in the flour. And this is what you should end up with, is a nice crumbly mixture like this. Next, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of ice cold water. You can drizzle it in throughout the entire dough instead of just in one spot. This will help make it come together a little bit easier. You can grab your rubber spatula and start mixing it together until a dough starts to form. You may need more water. I needed more water, so I added a little bit at a time until my dough started to come together. You want to end up with a nice, smooth dough. You don't want it too dry, or you don't want it too wet either. Now you can tell a dough is starting to form, and we're going to ditch the spatula and start kneading our dough by hand. It's best just to knead right in the bowl because that holds everything together really well. Now is the best time to tell if your dough is too tacky or if it's too dry. You can tell if it's too dry if your dough doesn't start to come together and you have large clumps of dough still. Mine was a little dry, so I added a little bit more water. Do little drops of water at a time. You don't want to overdo it. If you add too much water and your dough is too sticky and tacky, you can add more flour until it becomes smooth. You should end up with an orange dough ball like this. Now that you have your orange dough ball, we're going to wrap it in saran wrap to let it rest. Letting it rest will help make it easier to work with later, letting the gluten relax, making it easier to roll out with a rolling pin. It's not a must to do this step, but it will help. Alright, we'll let our dough rest for 30 minutes. In the meantime, we can get our oven preheated. We're going to preheat our oven to 375. Now that our dough is rested, let's get to making some crackers. You're going to need some extra flour. Go ahead and dust your work surface. Dusting your work surface like this will help prevent the dough from sticking to the table. Then lightly dust your rolling pin as well. This will also help prevent the dough from sticking to the rolling pin. Then we're going to roll out the dough like we did in our sea salt cracker video. Keep flipping it and rolling each side multiple times. This will help keep it into a uniform rectangle. It doesn't have to be a perfect square or rectangle. This will just help keep it even. You want to apply pressure evenly throughout when you're rolling, because if you don't, you're going to end up with thick and thin spots. So apply the same pressure throughout. Then we're going to do our best to roll out our dough to about 1/8 of an inch thickness. Now that you have your dough rolled out, you're going to grab your miniature pizza cutter or just a normal size pizza cutter, whatever you have. We're going to try to square off our dough as best as possible. You don't have to do this, but I was just trying to make uniform squares like a real Cheez-It and take away the scraps. We'll use those later, so don't throw them away. Now that you have your square piece of dough, you're going to start cutting vertically. You're going to cut them into strips about 1 inch or so thick. They don't have to be perfect or exact. This is really hard to cut with a miniature pizza cutter like this. Now that you have vertical cuts, we're going to cut horizontally across our dough, doing the same thing to make nice little squares. Now that you have little perfect cracker squares, we're going to use a skewer or a chopstick in this case and punch a hole right in the middle of the cracker. This will give us the look of a real Cheez-It. Then we're going to line a half sheet tray with tin foil that's been lightly greased and start laying out our Cheez-It crackers. You're going to leave a small space in between each cracker to ensure everything gets a nice even bake on it. So run through and do this for all of your crackers. You can do multiple holes if you choose to, but I went with a single one to give us the look and feel of a real Cheez-It. And this is what my pan of Cheez-Its look like. Then we'll go ahead and throw them in our preheated oven. Then we'll set a timer for 15 minutes. We'll bake our crackers for 15 minutes. Your crackers may take more or less time depending on how hot your oven runs. Now that our timer's gone off, we'll go ahead and pull our crackers out. Now this is what my pan of crackers look like. We'll let them cool for about 5 minutes and let them crisp up the rest of the way before we try them. Alright, let's give our homemade Cheez-It a try. Right off the bat you can tell that they're not neon orange like an actual Cheez-It, but that just means there's less ingredients you can actually pronounce and know what they are. So let's give it a shot. These things are crunchy, cheesy goodness. There's a lot of flavors going on from the onion powder and the garlic powder. And I use the smoked paprika, which gives it a nice little smoky flavor to it. Then there's that nice toasted flavor on it as well. And then they're nice and crunchy, which gives it a great mouthfeel. Overall, these are really good crackers. Alright, that's it for today's video. I'm starting my very own series on here, and today was the first episode. It's going to be all about comfort food, from your favorite meals to your favorite snack when you were a little kid, and everything in between. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's video, give it a like. Also find me on Instagram at TaylorMakes92. And go stuff my face with the rest of these Cheez-Its and some actual cheese. Sounds really healthy. So we'll see you on the next one. The texture well with these crackers. Then that onion and garlic powder seasoning you want in these. They're not too salty, my nose itches, which adds another flavor profile. Then the flavor and the flavor and the flavor. And they're nice and crunchy, which is a great mouthfeel, like an actual cracker. They are crackers. What am I saying? Alright, that's it for this video.